Okay, this is part 2 of Pitfalls. Y'all, I'm having trouble because every time I max out my storage from these videos before I upload them, then it cuts my videos off. So bear with me. I don't want to re-record all of them because I'm running out of time of my time to finish these videos today. So picking up on bias it's gonna be different depending on your individual circumstance. Another pitfall, I want to speak directly to people homeschooling for philosophical reasons, particularly it seems like either on the category of very religious or very secular. And there are a lot of reasons people homeschool, but I do want to encourage you to again consider your blind spots and consider that to be courageous and not be afraid of viewpoints differing than your own. I think as a generation, when I was growing up, the homeschoolers I knew were all pretty much homeschooling for conservative religious reasons. And that's understandable and a valid option. However, we've seen the fruit of that now as that generation has grown up, that for many of them, they felt disserviced and undereducated because they were so philosophically sheltered. So I present that to you as an observation. For those of you who have strong religious or philosophical leanings or strong feelings about that, again, this is just a pitfall because as homeschooling, you don't have anyone else to kind of come alongside and push back on your philosophy. And for the sake of your children, I want to advocate for them in your life and say, in general, having a broad experience and a broad selection of voices speaking into our lives not only is part of education, but it also helps cultivate discernment. So if you truly do, if your end goal for them truly is education, not indoctrination, you really do want to present them with a wide variety, a broad palette. So don't be fearful, but be courageous. You're learning alongside your child, so you're free to offer your viewpoint as you explore different ideas. But I want to present that to you because I think it can be a big pitfall and perhaps can feel right in the moment, and maybe we don't see what the fruit later on we reap as homeschoolers of that is. So I present that to you. Thirdly, area of homeschooling that can be hard is conflict. It can create new conflict between parent and child, and certainly sibling conflict that we talked about a little bit in the sibling video. Particularly if the longer your child has been in a classroom setting, you may notice a period of conflict transitioning to homeschool. Maybe if you did remote schooling in the spring, you saw this. You're all of a sudden taking on a teacher role and kids aren't used to that and they may push back in a different way. I encourage you as much as you can to think of this pushback as clues for you to decipher what is or isn't working, and to opt out of the pieces that are adding unnecessary conflict and to really work through the pieces that you feel like are essential. So if you're getting a lot of pushback on categorical choices, give your student more agency, especially if this is your first time homeschooling. If you really are excited about learning astronomy, but they were really excited about human anatomy, well, it's an opportunity to bend that probably is going to serve you well in the long run. So try and discern what the moments of conflict are teaching you. Do your children need to have some time learning separately? Do you need to structure into your day some moment where everyone does independent work and then they can come back together and play? Do you need to figure out, maybe you do need a curriculum because you're having too much conflict with your child and you need to be able to look at something external and say, this is our assignment for today. We're going to do it. So ponder that, but conflict is a piece of it. But it's not necessarily something that even you want to eliminate. It does give you information for how to make adjustments. You really want to try and see your child's heart in this. And they're, like you, carrying a big load. So this year in particular, there are a lot of losses, especially for kids who've never homeschooled for the first time. So I I want to encourage you that it's probably not going to be a huge deal if you feel like you need to bend more than you would like to on your educational goals for the sake of your child's emotional well-being and mental health. So really be a student of your child in this time. It's a unique opportunity given to you by homeschooling. You're going to spend a lot more time together, and really relax into that. 1 year with my I had 2 boys homeschooling, and because we also had a young preschooler, every day we'd go for a walk together, put her in the stroller, and we'd walk and talk. And it was not really anything educational we were talking about. It primarily was football because they were really into football. So I learned a lot about football, but really was about football players. But those are some of my most precious moments of homeschooling. And so I want to encourage you, if you're feeling conflict, to look for those moments where maybe you pause or set aside some of your educational goals to really try and bond and connect with your children in a healthy way. That's going to help give them some stability in what is going to be a crazy year. And I guarantee you, if you are thinking that way as a parent, you're going to be just fine this year. Like, you may not, if they are going back to traditional school next year, they may have some adjustment with the scope and sequence, but they, as a student and as a learner and as an individual, are going to be in a much more grounded and healthy place. So, if you have to address conflict by giving up some educational goals, do it gladly and cheerfully. throw in some documentaries and read alouds and things that you can just sit on the couch and do together that can really cultivate closeness, and set aside the things that are causing conflict. So encourage you in that. Another pitfall is homeschooling can be pretty isolating, especially during a time of COVID. It can be even more isolating, and you can feel lonely. Some of the outlets that are typical for homeschoolers, like co-ops or extracurricular activities and athletics, may not be available to you. You can do some of these things virtually. Maybe you will have another family in your neighborhood or nearby that's also homeschooling, and you can say, hey, we're gonna periodically get together at the park. But I present that to you not because I have any solutions, just to observe it. We're experiencing it too. As a large family, we have a slight benefit in that my boys are really good friends, so they're not experiencing the isolation in a way that an only child would, but there's still a lot of loss. They haven't seen their friends since March, and it's just a loss we're all experiencing. You're probably feeling isolated and lonely too, and in doing homeschooling you might. I think social media is a strange gift to us in this time. You can stay connected to other homeschooling families that way. But be observant, because this is a struggle for homeschoolers in the best of times, and in these challenging times, it's going to be extra. Your enthusiasm may take you a month in before you start to feel the isolation. So think about what may relieve that. And again, I encourage you to be willing to lay aside educational goals in favor of things that are going to cultivate connection within the family unit or the bubble, whatever you have, the COVID bubble that you do have. Invest heavily there and say, great, we're going to get together with the grandparents, who are the only other people we're going to see, and we're going to do read alouds together, because that's our outlet, and try and maximize those outlets to try and combat some of that loneliness. And I'm with you in it. It's hard. It's going to be hard. And most homeschoolers experience a lull partway through the year, and you'll experience several lulls where it's just the day in, day out of it begins to wear on you. And be willing to change it up. Maybe you're going to take a week off for a week. Maybe you're going to pause everything except whatever's your most fun subject. Maybe you're going to decide to switch over to 4-day weeks for a while. Maybe you are going to extend your school year so that you can take 2 weeks off. Homeschooling gives you the flexibility to do this. So if you're feeling unmotivated, if everyone is discouraged and it happens one day, well, stick with your schedule and carry on. But if the days are dragging on into weeks, think of how you can try something new to shake it up. Sometimes just taking a week off helps everybody come back more refreshed, and it's really worth doing that. And then the final thing here is you're probably going to second guess yourself many times along the way. Some of this is just part of the deconstruction process. For many of us, we are most comfortable with the classroom model of education, the traditional model. And we're going way outside of that when we start homeschooling. And we maybe have our safety net of a curriculum that is still modeled against the classroom model, but we start to feel the echo chamber crowd in, and we start to feel like, are we royally going to screw up our children? And is everything going to be awful? And I would encourage you to kind of set that aside. Think of what you're doing in this moment. You're not thinking of what is going to happen when they're 18. You're thinking of what's going to happen in this year, in this global moment. Encourage yourself with the depressing fact that for everyone, schooling this year is not going to meet optimal educational goals. So in that sense, it's the best year to experiment with homeschooling, because in-class learning, remote learning, hybrid learning, all of those are going to really cause speed bumps for educational learning goals. So accept that. We all have to accept that. Take courage, the fact that you are even watching these videos. I'm sure you're pulling from other people as well and other resources. Your level of intentionality is going to serve and ground your children very well. And you're going to cultivate an environment that is learning. Remember, again, that you're not trying to achieve X, Y, and Z goal. You are trying to say, you're rethinking what it means to educate your child. Because you don't have a classroom where next year they're going to be with a different teacher and different students, and they have to meet certain goals before they can go on to the next classroom. Because you're not thinking in that model, you really are thinking broad education. How do I teach my child about the world? How do I teach them about all of these people and events that have happened through history? How do I teach them how to communicate? How do I teach them how to become lifelong learners? And so those goals are very different, and the way we evaluate them are very different. So be encouraged. When you are tempted to second guess yourself, remind yourself, and it may encourage you to do some research into the development, just some your own personal reading in the development of modern education. Be encouraged that the way we educate now is just this brief moment in history. There are wonderful things about it, but it's not the way people have learned across all times and all cultures and through all history. So your child will have to adjust if they've been used to classroom education, but it doesn't mean that they're not going to learn or thrive in a different model. So hopefully that's encouraging. If you still feel really paralyzed by this, you can plan to purchase a standardized test a few months in or in the spring to just kind of see, okay, how are we doing? And I recommend doing that if you're going to homeschool long-term, because it's a helpful thing if you ever think you might transition back into classroom learning, because then you're going to know, oh, well, my child's behind in math, or in our case it was always like capitalization or spelling, and some of those things, I think that's pretty common with homeschoolers. Like spelling is usually atrocious when they transition into classroom learning, because that's a big focus in classroom learning, and a lot of homeschoolers are not doing that. So it will help you if you ever plan to kind of help them reintegrate, and it may help you be like, okay, we are on track. They are doing fine. But I want to encourage you that you will do fine, but second guessing yourself is a pitfall, and you're going to feel the pushback from other people. Again, it's a year where a lot of people are exploring homeschooling who never thought they were, so you're in good company. But a lot of us have a lot of baggage with homeschooling, and people have strong opinions about every aspect of parenting. As a parent, you have, from the moment you were pregnant, if you're a woman, or if your partner was pregnant, if you're a man, like from that moment, you have had people give their unsolicited opinion into the decision you're making about your child. So this is just another area where you're going to hear from all sorts of people who have strong thoughts about what you're doing. And so, listen and learn, but you are making this decision, weighing all the options. You feel like it's best for your family. Own that. You're going to be just fine. Try and tune out those voices and find some encouraging ones that are going to cheer you along in what you're trying to do, because you're trying to do a hard thing. Give yourself permission to do it imperfectly, to feel discouraged, to recognize that that you are going to have bias, you are going to have strange philosophical motivations, there is going to be conflict, there are going to be hard days, but that doesn't mean you're failing. It just means you're a human in a family with children who are developing in a really hard time with a lot of things we don't even fully understand how they're affecting us, and give yourself a huge pass in a lot of ways, not out of laziness or indifference, but just because we need to release some of that. Your children are going to thrive if you are not doing the really driven perfectionist thing. They're gonna thrive if you're gonna relax into this and enjoy them along the way.